Cutting, the bane of all editors' existence. Now, I remember when I was 17, I was sitting at my desk at my home setup and I was working on a project. Now, it's getting pretty late, it's 7 p.m. and the project that I'm working on, it's been paid for, but it's due tomorrow. Now, that doesn't sound too bad because I've had an entire week to work on this, so surely I'd get it done on time. But the problem is when I look at my screen, I'm looking at one big chunk of footage that hasn't even been cut yet. That's right, I had a whole week to do the video, but I hadn't even started. And now I'm here at 7 p.m. I have school the next day. And I'm just getting started. Now, here's my thought. Okay, I've wasted an entire week. I'm going to lock in. So what I do is I put my phone to the side, stop looking at that, and I grab my keyboard and mouse, and I stare at my screen. Now, I start cutting, I start looking through the footage, the guy's making jokes, cool, I know I'll keep that in. And 15 minutes later, the video is still not cut. In fact, I'm on my phone again. So I kind of get pissed at myself. I'm like, dude, it's 7:15. I have school the next day. I'm going to look like a zombie. I can't do another all-nighter. So I throw my phone away and then I work on the project and then I find myself on YouTube an hour later. Now, it's coming up to 8, 9 p.m. And I've done this whole lock-in thing so many times to the point where I've actually just accepted it and told myself, fuck it, I'll just continue watching YouTube for a while. It didn't get any better. Now, by the time that I actually started working and I realized that, wait, this isn't so bad, I'm starting to work through the cut. That's when I get hungry and now I'm downstairs eating food. So you see, I just couldn't get this project done and I had cut about a minute of the video and there was still about 20 minutes left. Now the problem is that it's due tonight and it's 10 p.m. and it's at this point that I basically gave up. And I told myself, you know what? I don't even need to get the whole video done. As long as I can just get like a little bit of the cutting done, I'll just work on it tomorrow morning. But here's what's interesting. It was 10 p.m. when I made that decision. A few hours later, well, exactly 3 hours later at 1 a.m., I was there exporting the video ready to send it to the client. I'd spent all week trying to start this project, and then in 3 hours, I got the whole thing done. Now, I was wondering why in the world that happened, but looking back at it with, I guess, hindsight, I have the experience to now say the reason that happened was I just needed it to be broken up. Because the human brain, it does not deal well with complexity. It does not deal well with tasks which it cannot automatically break down. But what it can do is these small tasks, automatically, it just knows how to figure it out. So let me give you an example. If right now I told you that within the next year, you had to become president, your brain probably doesn't know the exact process, who to speak to, what websites to look at. It probably can't figure out all of it in one go, right? But if I told you something as simple as sit on your bed, probably a lot simpler. In fact, even if you don't actively want to go do it, your brain has automatically just like figured out the steps. Well, I'd stand up from wherever I'm sitting, I'd walk over to my room, and then I'd sit on my bed. Like, cool. Your brain can automatically do that. So when there's a large task, like finish an entire video, make this a banger, or run for president, your brain doesn't really know how to break it down. But when it's something smaller, like, you know what? You don't even need to finish the whole video. All you need to do is just get the cut done. In fact, if the cut is too scary and your brain is kind of scared and doesn't want to work and looks for other means of distracting itself because, I mean, it's so difficult to do this big task, even within the cut, you can break that down even more. And that's what we're going to talk about in this video. So this process has allowed me to not only get cuts done faster, but it stopped me from procrastinating and really made it easier for me to grind out videos. And the best part is it makes the videos look better as well. So you're getting the best of both worlds. Not only do you get faster, but the video looks good too. So there's actually a 3-stage process to cutting. Most people think cutting is a stage on its own. There's actually 3 within them. And that's the rough cut, the fine cut, and the final cut. So let's start with the rough cut. The rough cut is where you have a big block of footage. You've just imported it. And now what you're going to do is you're basically going to take out things that you know basically in any universe would not like stay into the actual video. So long sections of silences, you can see that in the waveform and then cut that out because you know it's not going to make it into the final video. So you can basically, for the rough cut, not even listen to the video, but we'll do what I call is cutting to the waveform. The waveform is where in most editing software, I use Premiere, so I'll explain it for mine. Right under the video sort of clip, you see an audio and it kind of shows a wave like this. When it gets loud, it's a bigger wave. When it gets quiet, it's a smaller wave. You can cut just by looking at the waveform, and you know that at least you've cut out the main chunks of silences. So for example, if you see that the guy hasn't spoken in like 25 seconds, likelihood is there's probably nothing going on there. Or if you see that, so for other silences, you see that, it wasn't that long of a silence. He was probably just thinking. What you can do is just cut with the waveform. So you kind of scroll through, cut, silences, do a quick check, maybe 3-4 seconds, see if he was doing anything important. But in most cases, all the action is happening when audio is actually playing. So the rough cut, you notice how we've gone from, okay, you need to cut some huge video and get it down to a perfect cut. That's super hard. We've simplified it to, well, for you editing, we just need to get rid of the silences. Now, things like storytelling, visuals, sound design, music, all of these things, are they important? Yes. But you can't even solve them now. So why think about any of those things when we're just removing the silences? Once you've removed the silences, that's when we're going to go into the fine cut. So we finished the rough cut, now we're onto the fine cut. Now, you should be left with pretty much just the majority of the clip still being left there, but you've gotten rid of the stuff that would never make it in at all. Now, any mistakes, they're still in here. Any times the client has repeated himself, still in there. Any bits that don't really make sense staying in the video for storytelling purposes, these mistakes are still all in the video. But this is the point where we can start removing them. So this is where you're going to actually listen through the video for the first time. Notice how we haven't even listened to the video yet. We're going to listen to the video for the first time, and while we're going, whenever there's mistakes, so the guy stutters like crazy or he repeats himself, things like that, this is where we're going to cut those out. So go through, do that. And here's what's interesting. For a lot of clients, and for that guy that I was working on in the story I told at the beginning of the video, there were times where he would repeat a phrase. So it was in the reacts niche, meaning there were videos he was reacting in. He'd say like, oh, that's so cool. And there would be times where he would say things multiple times just so that me as the editor, I have sort of the freedom to pick whichever reaction is better. Now, at this fine cut stage, I didn't remove the repeat lines. So I didn't actually think about, oh, if he says, I can't believe this happened. And then he says again like, oh shit, wait, that I didn't say it properly. I can't believe this happened. And he does it like 2 more times. I'll just keep all of them in the cut for now. The reason being, if I start thinking about, oh, which one sounds better, which one sounds more enthusiastic, if I do that now, I'm going to be so confused and overwhelmed when I haven't even cut out the main mistakes yet. So if someone started like crazy, if there's genuinely like, if it's a kid's channel, the guy swears, something like that, we can remove them. Now, the final cut, this is the third stage of cutting. This is where you essentially look back at your fine cut and you say, what is the final video going to have? So after the fine cut, you should basically be around where you want the final video length to be. So let's say you were aiming for an 8.5 minute video. Your fine cut will usually take you to about 9-10 minutes. The final cut is where we're going to bring it down to exactly where we want it. So you're going to go through, and this is where you're going to decide from the repeated lines which ones stay in. If you feel that the client, maybe he hasn't said it in the exact same words, but he's repeated the same concept. You'll notice I even do it in this video. I don't edit these videos, but you can imagine there's times where there's a certain sentence that I might say not twice, but the same concept twice. Completely normal. I mean, it's how you teach. But in something like gaming or Reacts or something that's more entertainment based rather than education, it usually makes a lot more sense in those niches and genres of content in specific that you don't repeat information. Every new cut should give new information to the viewer. And by information, I don't mean, oh, like 4 times 18 is whatever the number is, and that's new information. That's not what I mean. By information, I mean something new. So a character in the video who's being newly introduced, the character feeling a new emotion, a new stake being introduced, the story moving along. You never want multiple clips or too many clips in a row where the story hasn't moved along, but you're just giving more and more of the same information to the viewer. That's the type of stuff we're going to be cutting out in the final cut. And also, once we've done that, we're going to be fixing the pacing. Now, pacing is one of those things where it's a little out of the scope of this video in specific, but it's one of the most important things when it comes to retention and just how your video looks. Pacing, everyone has a natural understanding of pacing because just as a human, that's what you have. I mean, you will understand when something sounds natural. When I speak to you, there's a certain cadence, there's certain pauses that I use, and that will seem natural. But if you cut certain pauses too short or certain pauses too long, suddenly the viewer feels like they're speaking or they're listening to a video rather than listening to a person. And people don't like videos. People like people. And if we can get our videos to be as closely representative of that human experience, that's when you get killer retention. So the final cut is where you're going to be going in literally frame by frame in your cuts, maybe listening to the same cut 5-10 times and just making sure you experiment with, what if I added a couple of frames of silence here? What if I made it cut shorter? What if I added the pause on the end of the first clip? So when there's 2 clips next to each other, what if I added the pause here and then took away some here? What if I did it the other way around? What if I J-cut? So this is where you're experimenting and finalizing all of the timings. And when you work through cuts in this way, where you've got the rough cut, where you're just taking out silences, then you got the fine cut, where you're kind of looking at your options, removing mistakes, and then the final cut, where you're ending with how long the video is actually going to be. This is when you're set so much better to not only cut faster, feel less overwhelmed, but it sets you up perfectly to move on to the visuals. Now, this video was about how to cut, and for full transparency, it would take me hours to pretty much explain my full workflow. I do have a school community, which you can check out in the description. For full transparency, it is something that if you are basically have never edited before, probably won't help you. If you are trying to just get faster and the projects that you are using, like you are doing, you want to get better and faster at that so you can focus more on what actually matters and actually improving rather than just kind of spending all your time cutting. I mean, I have my school community in the description that you can check out. So hope this was useful, and yeah, I will see you in the next one, lad. Take care.